Hello, the internet. I'm up on Beenoskee today. It's very, very windy, and it's just died down a small bit, enough for me to say what I'm at today and tonight. Firstly, I want to show around here. Look over there. There's a little waterfall over there. Trickles all the way down. Drops there to a massive waterfall, which I showed a little bit of a while ago. That's the Annascaul River, goes all the way down there to Annascaul Lake. Around the corner here is another big waterfall. This is beautiful. The weather's not great, it's very windy, but this is a beautiful, beautiful day for hiking. My goodness, I love it. Right, so I'm outside the town of Annascaul, hence the name Annascaul Lake. And it's the birthplace of Tom Crean. And today I'm doing Beenoskee. It's Ireland's 13th highest. The height of it is there on the screen now, because I can't think what the height is. And the plan today is to do this walk, this hike for Beenoskee, and give little updates as I go, the usual story. Oh, you can see the path I came up is over there. There's the path I came up. Nice handy path. Across that bridge. I crossed that bridge when I came to it, didn't I? After my walk, or maybe while I'm doing the walk, it's only will work out for me because of the wind, but I'd like to tell a little story about Tom Crean, because he's my hero, he's my inspiration. He might even be my #1 hero out of all the heroes. I just love the stories about Tom Crean. Michael Smith wrote a book, it's called Unsung Hero, and it's an amazing book. It's written in plain language, like non-academic language, so it's really easy read. But it's a fascinating, fascinating read. So the story I'm going to tell is about the Terra Nova expedition that Tom Crean went on. He went on 3 expeditions to the Antarctic, to Antarctica. Do you say the Antarctic? So he went on the Discovery expedition with Captain Scott. He went on the Terra Nova expedition with Scott, and he went on the Endurance expedition with Shackleton, Ernest Shackleton. All big names in polar exploration. And Tom Crean was on all of them. All of those ones. And I'm just going to tell a small story from the Terra Nova expedition, and it won't really spoil the overall thing, because oh my god, the stories, the swashbuckling in that book. Michael Smith did a great job on that book, and I love the book. So that's it. I'm going to camp tonight because the wind isn't behaving itself up around here. I might tell my Tom Crean story while I camp and light a fire. I'm hoping to camp down by Annascaul Lake, but I didn't see too many spots. I like flat ground. Up there in the clouds, that's Beenoskee. Beenoskee. Let me get a pole, let me get a pole. I came up this valley here. I came up this valley. See that waterfally thing over there? I came right up there and along here. And the clouds have moved away a small bit. The forecast is it's supposed to get a little bit better, and it is starting to get there. I'm looking up at Beenoskee there now, and it's very misty, so I might not have the view, but if it does keep brightening up as it has been the last 40 minutes, then we should be good for a view. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. This is the top of Beenoskee. And I've no view. Hiking in February will do that, yeah. If I walk over here small bit, the wind goes away. Wow, look at that drop. Now I know at the end of that drop there's a lake, because it's on my map. Oh, jeez, from the top of Beenoskee. Fucking no view again, man. I'm taking through these 100 highest mountains and doing them in January and February and that. I'm not getting the views. I know we're on the Dingle Peninsula here, and I know the view from here is insanely good. But it's not my view today. Whoa, I've made some progress getting down this thing. But I'm just looking back at it. I said it a dozen times or more, the camera doesn't do justice how steep things are. So that's what you go up. You go up that thing. Whoa. And then you've got some more to go to get to the top of Beenoskee. And I'm just looking back down here then at the valley I came up. Really nice walk. But that steep bit, I nearly gave up. I nearly gave up, right? And this is the whole theme of my Tom Crean talk here. Tom Crean endured so much to save people. That's why he's an inspiration to me. Because this was a lovely walk up through the valley with the waterfalls. And the forecast was supposed to be nice. So I was really full of high spirits after my 2.5 hour drive to get here. And then as I faced into that, and the weather got bad, the going got tough, and then you start finding excuses in your head. No, I'm not a fan of Conor McGregor as a person. I like his fighting, because I like a bit of MMA myself, a bit of Muay Thai and a bit of Jiu-Jitsu. I love his quote where he talks about not having an opponent. There is no opponent. You're fighting against yourself. And I love that, because it's a mental game, you know. So Tom Crean was so physically and mentally strong to do what he did. And I had to kind of channel my inner Tom Crean to get up to the top of that, because I nearly talked myself out of it, you know. I started telling myself, the weather's gone bad, I can come back on a nicer day. I ended up starting to walk later than I'd hoped, and I'm camping tonight. So I was telling myself, look, come back another time when you can get a good camp in, because I'm probably going to be setting my tent up in the dark. So I was telling myself that. Come back another day, come back another day. Bring a friend with you, sure, wouldn't they love it? Oh, it's great. I started giving myself all the excuses to stop and turn back. So that's why I find Tom Crean inspirational, because you can just keep in mind what he did with certain challenges in life, and you just find another you find an extra level of ability and motivation. That's what I'm saying. That's my camp spot, Lake Annascaul. That's where I'm going to camp up for the evening. It has remained very, very windy. It's been windy all day, and it has remained windy. The forecast has said it wouldn't be, but I'm not going to get angry with the forecast, because I'd be angry all the time if I did. But that's it. I have a nice spot here. You can see there's a white van up there. That's where you kind of normally park, so I just came down here a small bit, and just to show that there's no hard feelings after I leave. There's already one of these things here, so I'm going to use that for my fire. I'm going to sit out here and chill. Hopefully that wind goes down, and hopefully I get to tell my Tom Crean story. Look at that beauty. So I didn't think it would come to the fireside to have this chat and this story about Tom Crean, but sure, here we are. Gather in, children. The light went away from me, so I had to set up my camp and didn't get to visit Tom Crean's graveside and pay my respects, but we'll do that in the morning. We'll do that in the morning. Right now we're going to chill out here, so I'm going to give my little story that I said I'd give, and as I said before, you can skip ahead and just look at the time stamping on it and not listen to this Tom Crean story, but it's worth listening to. So the story I'm telling about Tom Crean comes from that Michael Smith book called Unsung Hero, and he was looking at he's a great historian and researcher and author, and he describes himself that he was seeing Tom Crean's name pop up in all these other people's books, but Tom Crean had no book. Tom Crean was a very humble man and didn't keep diaries on his trips, didn't write letters, wasn't a prolific letter writer, and didn't release memoirs or anything like that when he retired from the Navy. And only for Michael Smith doing his research, I don't know, would we, the people that do know about Tom Crean know about him? I certainly wouldn't have. But I love him, he's my hero, as I said before. And here's why. I'm going to tell one story about him on the Terra Nova expedition that he went on with Captain Scott. But just before that, I have to explain how he met Captain Scott. Captain Scott was travelling to Antarctica to try to have a look, see what it was all about, because people hadn't really been to Antarctica. The people that had been, Ernest Shackleton hadn't been at that stage. He hadn't. Very few people had been there, and Scott took an expedition there to have a look. It was called the Discovery Expedition, and he pulled into New Zealand, into a port there, and he was missing a sailor, and he needed a spare one. And by pure chance, Tom Crean's ship was docked at port, called the Ringarooma was the name of his ship. So Scott asked the Ringarooma people, have you got a spare fella that's reliable? And Tom Crean was very highly thought of when he joined the Navy at a young age. He showed that he was quite dedicated, very committed. He respected the authority of the Navy, the hierarchy of it. Hard worker, very reliable, and just a great character, just very upbeat, very high-spirited. So Tom Crean volunteered, and the people from the Ringarooma looked at the different volunteers and said, yeah, Crean is your man. So Scott took Crean on the Discovery Expedition, and Scott and Crean became kind of comrades in a way, in that Scott could see in Crean that he was all of those things and much, much more. He was for Antarctica, to do the work they were doing, especially the man-hauling of sledges. You need to be physically very strong, but mentally very strong. And there's so many men on these expeditions for so long. The ability Crean had to lift the spirits of other men, to always be kind of chipper, always optimistic, that was something that Scott spotted. So when the Discovery Expedition finished, they didn't attempt to pole, they just were kind of a research expedition more than anything else, in my opinion. And when the Discovery Expedition returned to Britain, Scott recommended Crean for a promotion and a wage increase and all that kind of stuff, which he got. Scott also requested that Crean come on many of the voyages that Scott went on in the intervening years. So when Scott was tasked with putting together a team of people to go to Antarctica again and attempt the pole, try to get at the South Pole, make that your mission of this next expedition, he picked Crean as one of his men, and Crean was a petty officer on the Terra Nova expedition, and this is the one I'm talking about. So when you're going from where their base was in Antarctica to the South Pole, and back, you're looking at about 2,500 kilometers, okay? Huge distance. It's like the distance from London to Moscow. Imagine walking from London to Moscow. Imagine if I asked you to walk from London to Moscow along a tarmac road and be well assisted and aided with your nice comfy runners. And these guys were doing that kind of stuff, but they were dragging all their stuff on sleds through the harshest of conditions. Antarctica can get down to minus 40 degrees Celsius, 50, 60 degrees Celsius. There could be blizzards where you can't move out of your tent for days and days. And by the way, you're in a tent in Antarctica. Jesus wept. And they also, to get up to the polar plateau, they have to go up a thing called the Beardmore Glacier, which is, it's 10,000 feet in height. So they're dragging their sledges up a mountain in the snow and the ice. There's crevasses everywhere, there's hazards everywhere. Everything about that place wants you dead. And to survive it is a feat in itself, and that's outside of trying to get to the South Pole. So the plan to reach the South Pole was to spend the whole winter there doing a thing called depot laying, where men would trek out into the Antarctic wilderness, towards the South Pole and lay these depots of food and other kinds of supplies, maybe clothing and tents and things like that, so that when the march went to the South Pole, there'd be these depots along the way that people could stock up on food and everything else. Then when you get to the South Pole and you're coming back, the depots are there again for you. So to give you an example of how long people were there, Tom Crean went on one mission during the Terra Nova voyage, which was just a depot laying mission, and it took 8 weeks. He spent 8 weeks trekking across Antarctica with a team of guys just to lay a depot and back. 8 weeks is a huge amount of time, like. So when the actual burst for the pole came, it was 16 men, and they did it in a kind of relay thing where 16 started, 4 went back, that left 12. Then 4 came back again, that left 8, and then the plan was for 4 to reach the pole. Now, none of the men knew who'd be the final 4 to go to the pole, but they all knew that Captain Scott would be one of the 4. So all the men were kind of vying, not against each other, but in cooperation, hoping that they'd be the guys to go to the pole. They trekked up the Beardmore Glacier. It is arduous, torturous work. They brought 2 tractors with them, motorised tractors. They failed. They brought Siberian ponies with them. They broke down. The ponies weren't suitable. They had to shoot the ponies. They brought dog teams. The dogs weren't suitable. They shot many of those dogs. And they ended up man-hauling. So they man-hauled the sledges, is how they describe it, and they man-hauled up the Beardmore Glacier. Now there was one guy in Crean's hauling team called Kerry, and he described a 6-hour, there was one day that they spent 6 hours putting arduous, back-breaking work into dragging their sledge through the Beardmore Glacier. 6 solid hours, and he describes it in his diaries or memoirs or his book or whatever he wrote afterwards. But it's detailed in Michael Smith's book there. How they were so fatigued, so exhausted after 6 hours of trying to drag their sledge and themselves, all the supplies. And when they checked their sledge meter at the end of the 6 hours, they'd moved 1 mile. That's all they'd moved, is 1 mile. Which is very disheartening. And to think that they have to go 2,500 kilometres. I'm mixing kilometres and miles there now, but you get the picture. So they got to the top of the Beardmore Glacier, and there was 8 men left. Crean is one of them. And Scott decided Crean's not going to the pole. Crean is heading back with 2 other guys called Evans and Lashley. For a strange reason that nobody knows, Scott decided to not take 4 men to the pole, he'll take 5. 5 people to the pole meant longer time cooking food. This doesn't mean anything to you and me now, but from what I've been reading, cooking food for 5 instead of 4 takes a longer time. 5 people inside in the tent instead of 4 is more, it's more uncomfortable, less sleep, so more fatigue. Just makes things a bit harder. But what it does do is there's 5 people dragging the sledge instead of 4. What it does for Crean, Lashley and Evans is now there's 3 dragging the sledge instead of 4. So things get tougher for those guys. Just to mention how Scott got on his trek to the pole before I go back to how how Crean, Evans and Lashley got on. Scott reached the pole. He reached the pole on this date, I'll put it there. But when he got there, there was a tent already there with a Norwegian flag sticking out the top of it. Raoul Edmondson, a great explorer in his own right, had reached the pole before him. They were clearly heartbroken, and the only thing they could do was take their pictures and collect things from the tent that Edmondson had left behind for them. There was even a letter for Scott left behind in the tent. And they could just turn for home and head back. Now, to try to understand how tough these conditions were, when Scott's team of 5 started heading back, retracing their steps to try to get home, back to their base, Evans fell into a crevasse. He hit his head, he had a massive cut in his hand. Evans came out of the crevasse. He trekked on for a couple of days, he kept falling, he kept injuring himself. Evans died on the way back. That's Taff Evans, not the same Evans that's with Crean, obviously. They trekked on for another while. They got to the Beardmore Glacier. They even got down the Beardmore Glacier. And they were heading towards a depot called 1 Ton Depot, which is so called because it's a ton of supplies, which would have probably saved all their lives. But one guy that was part of the last 4, Evans, is now dead. The 5 is down to 4. A guy named Oates. He was terribly, terribly sick. He was sick with scurvy, frostbite. You get snow blindness, dehydration. They're starving, these men. To hydrate yourself, you have to set up your stove you have to put your oil, all that kind of thing. To melt ice, you can't carry water with you to rehydrate. So Oates is really, really struggling. So much so that he collapses and he's dying. And he tells Scott he's dying. He tells Scott and the other two men that he's dying and just leave me here, abandon me, save yourselves, save the food that I'm going to eat, save everything that I'm going to absorb as supplies and use them for yourselves. Scott refuses and says, no, you're coming with us. Then a blizzard hits and they have to set up their camp. Oates is inside in the camp and Oates knows he's dead. He knows he's after dying, but he's still conscious, he's still alive. And Oates says his famous words that you might have heard. He says, I'm going outside and maybe sometime. And he sacrifices himself to try to leave some of the food and supplies for the other men because he knows he's dead. He leaves the tent in the blizzard, which you can't do. You cannot do that. And his body's never recovered. So the 5 is now down to 3. And the blizzard continues. The team are out of food. They're 20 kilometers from One Ton Depot. 20 kilometers. Having trekked from the South Pole to where they are, about 1,000 kilometers. And they're only 20 from the depot that could save all their lives. They're out of food. They're out of a means of melting water. They're exhausted. They're so fatigued, dehydrated, starving. One morning, Scott gets up. He tries to wake the other 2 men. The blizzard is still going. Said, today's the day we're going to go. If this blizzard goes, the 2 men don't really move. They are alive, but during that day, they both die. And Scott writes in his diary, he knows he can't move now because he doesn't have food to move. He can't drag the stuff on his own, the sledge or anything. He knows he's dying and he's not happy about it. He records in his diary how sad he is that his life ends that way. So the whole polar party that from Scott's expedition that went to the South Pole, all 5 of them died. So in the same conditions, or very similar conditions, you've got Crean, Lashley and Evans trying to get back. Now when the 2 teams split into the 5 and the 3, Scott described Lashley and Evans as being stale, whatever that means. But Evans was clearly struggling from scurvy, snow blindness and frostbite. A lot of them had frostbite anyway, not that that's a flipping thing like I just described it, but Evans was really, really struggling, and that did tease out that the more they went on, the more they went down through the Beardmore Glacier, across the plateau, through the barrier. They were picking up food and all that from the depots, but just the arduousness of the journey was taking its toll on Evans, and he was so sick. He was passing a lot of blood. His teeth were falling out, his gums were rotting. He was just showing all the signs of scurvy. His joints were seizing up, and eventually he couldn't walk anymore. So Crean and Lashley tied him to the sledge, which meant that they had to now pull the whole sledge, which is the man hauling thing, which is disgusting. But now they have Evans on top of it as well. Evans ordered the 2 men. Evans was the higher ranking officer, and he ordered the 2 men to leave him. Evans said afterwards it was the only time in his naval career that he'd ever been disobeyed when he gave a command. So instead they set up a tent, they set up a camp, and Lashley and Crean had a chat, and they said, right, what can they do? They knew that the way they were 4 days from safety, 4 days march from home. If they went the way they were going, they were 56 kilometers from their base. They had very little food, they had no water, they had to melt ice to have water. They knew they were all dead, unless one of them stayed with Evans and one of them tried to get there. Almost an impossible task, and Crean said he'd go. This is the hero part. Crean took 3 biscuits, 2 sticks of chocolate. He took no tent, no sleeping bag, no additional supplies, no water, and Crean marched on his own across Antarctica for 56 kilometers. Now I can't imagine what that's like. There's crevasses, there's dangers, there's the threat of blizzards. I can't imagine what that's like, and neither can you. But Tom Crean did it. He paused once on his 56 kilometer walk, just once, to take shelter in a cave where he ate his chocolate and ate some of the biscuits, and he kept 1 biscuit, he put it in his pocket. And he said in a letter afterwards, even though he wasn't a prolific letter writer, he said he was keeping that for sustenance in case he needed it later on in his journey. And he marched the rest of the journey, the 56 kilometers, into the base where he collapsed. It took him 18 hours to walk 56 kilometers, which is an enormous feat. Today I did 10 kilometers just 10. It took me 4.5 hours up Beenoskee. And I'm beat after it. I'm relaxing here by a fire. I've nice warm jackets, hats as you can see, and kind of modern comforts of tents. Modern version of tents, not like they had. So they fed Crean porridge, they gave him some brandy, they made him warm, and they put Crean to bed. And Crean gave the coordinates of where the 2 men were. And the men that were back at the base prepared a dog sled team to head out. And as they were preparing, 2 hours after Crean got back to base, a blizzard hit. So they had to hold on. They couldn't move in a blizzard because you can't navigate, you can't move. It's going to kill you. And it would have killed Crean, that blizzard. So he was very, very lucky that he got back when he did. But the blizzard passed, the team of dogs went out, and they rescued Lashley and Evans. And Evans said afterwards he would have been dead only for Crean, and we all know that. Crean was awarded the highest medal for gallantry that the Navy awarded at the time. It's called the Albert Medal. And that's kind of why, excuse me, that's my story about Tom Crean from the Terra Nova expedition, how much of a hero he is. He saved those men's lives, and I don't think many people could do the march he did. From his discovery expedition with Scott, there are fantastic stories of heroism, how highly he's thought of. There's more stories from the Terra Nova expedition. That's my favourite. The one I just told is my favourite Tom Crean story. But the stuff he did afterwards with Ernest Shackleton and the endurance expedition are even more outrageous. The stuff that they did. I'm not going to spoil it, but it's in that book. It's in that Michael Smith book. You're going to have to look at it. He did more outrageous things and more outrageous heroism, but as part of a trio rather than just a solo guy doing that march he did. But that march he did saved guys' lives. What he did with the endurance expedition also saved guys' lives. And it's why he's an inspiration and a hero of mine. Because even on that walk today, I tried to make a few excuses as to why I should stop. Because it was cold, it was very, very windy. It started to get misty, I had no view. And I was tired, it was hard, it was tough on my little legs. And in my normal day-to-day life, if things get a little bit tough, and maybe in yours, I'm not trying to do this one of these motivational speeches or anything. But sometimes I think of Tom Crean and I just go like, do you know what, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. So that's it. I'm going to visit Tom Crean's grave tomorrow, and I'm going to bring the camera with me so we get to see it. We get to place those stones there that I brought from the top of Beenoskee. Oh, I don't think I mentioned that. I got 2 stones at the top of Beenoskee, a red one and a white one. They kind of represent the Cork colours to me because I'm from Cork and I'm in Kerry today. So I'm going to leave those at Tom Crean's grave, and I brought them from the top of Beenoskee. In Michael Smith's book he talks about Tom Crean being a guy that loved to roam the hills of Kerry. So this is kind of right next to Annascaul. I reckon Tom Crean probably went up this maybe once or twice in his life. So this walk has meant a lot to me. Telling that story means a lot to me. Tom Crean means a lot to me. And I'm going to sign off there now for the evening and enjoy my, I have to go cook a dinner. And in the morning I'll show my setup in the tent because it's too dark to do it now. Got good equipment these days because I saved up money to buy good equipment. It is February, so we're only just out of winter, we're heading into spring, so it's going to be a cold night. But I've no fear of the cold night these days with the good equipment. So that's it, I'm signing off. Thanks for watching up to this point. I'm going to get this fire going a bit more now. I've got more blocks for the fire. Look at that. Got to blaze it up, make it a bit more toasty for myself. Oh yeah. Having your toes up by a fire. Now these 2 blocks here, that one and that one, are holding back the major heat. But that's okay because it's hot enough. Good morning, campers. So it's pretty miserable
And I didn't get a chance to show my tent and set up last night, so I'm going to briefly do it now. But it's going to be brief because it's lashing. I had a really good night's sleep because I slept in this beast next to this beautiful lake, which is now turned into a really wet and rainy, smelly place. There's my seat that I sat on next to my fire. So there's the fire that was there before me, and that's why I'm leaving it after. Might clean it up a small bit. For my tent, it's an MSR Hubba Hubba. It's a 2-person tent, and with the height and size of me, it's perfect because there's enough room for your gear and stuff like that. I use a quilt instead of a sleeping bag. I just prefer quilts. This one's a Thermarest Vesper quilt. It goes down as you can look up the specs online. I'm not going to go into it too much. And my sleeping pad. Woo, let me get into that. Wow, my sleeping pad's a Thermarest as well. Neo Air X-Therm Max, because it's long and it's wide. So you'll see a lot of those Neo Air X-Therms are kind of tapered at the top and bottom, but I got the square one because it suits me a lot better. And I also have this. It's a real luxury item, I know, for camping, but again, it's Thermarest. I'm a devil for the Thermarest, but it's a compressible pillow. So like, just quickly, I'm going to show how it kind of, with one hand, I'm going to show how it squishes down. So that squashes down into itself, but I actually keep it in a really small stuff sack. So it puffs up the foam inside. It compresses down really small, and then it puffs up really big. So a comfortable night's sleep. I slept really. Look at the size. Look at the size of it. Oh my god, I can't believe how big it is. I'm gonna pack up all this gear now and go to Tom Crean's graveside and lay those 2 stones that I picked up at the top of Beenoskee yesterday, and that'll be the end of this video. So with haste, I will pack up this tent. I'll see you at the graveyard now. Such a peaceful place with there's barely a breeze. You just hear the birds singing, and as you get closer to Tom's grave, you can hear the river go past. So it's a very serene place to maybe come and spend a bit of time. Here we go. And I've been here before, so I knew those stones were on top. I knew people left kind of stones on top, so that's why I brought my 2. So if you ever visit this place, you'll know that I left those red and white ones there together up the Rebels. It's just my little tribute to Tom Crean, isn't it? And you had a little girl called Katie. She died while he was still alive, so that must have been an awful time of grief for Tom Crean. And by kind of coincidence, I have a little girl that's 2 months old and her name is Katie. Absolute coincidence, that. Just where the great man is buried. And with that, I sign off. Fantastic trip. Till the next one. I look there, till the next one. What a lovely place.